I wanted to begin by just congratulating you. I really thought the film was really beautiful visually, but also sort of resonated a lot with my sensibility on a kind of intellectual and
Yes.
philosophical level. I really enjoy that kind of film that asks the big questions and does it in an interesting way within the construct of the narrative. Which it's it's deceptively simple, yet it's richly metaphysical. I thought, and it sort of lingered with me a long time after I'd finished watching it. I was thinking about it quite a lot. Um, but obviously, the film has been out. It started in Venice and the festivals, and has been around the world internationally. And you were just talking there a little bit about the Q&As in London and how you were getting interesting questions. What sort of reaction have you been getting from audiences? What are the kinds of questions? Are you getting, big, difficult questions to answer about life and death and this kind of thing?
I think there was not much question about life and death. I think during the second screening there was a question about death, but I remember the first question that drew the audience to become quite emotional also, and I also myself felt emotional during the first screening. It was the question that relate between the past of Cambodia and the present time of Cambodia, and I kind of spoke out to the audience also that this the whole story of becoming human, it was based also from how I experienced um the life with my parents. Like my parents, they went through the war in Cambodia, the genocide, and after the genocide they also experienced another violence. So but they rarely talk about that like straightforwardly with me, and they told me a different story, but I mean they are feeling their pain. I wish I could hear more from them. That's why I made this kind of
Yeah.
film that kind of almost like a room of therapy for two people to sit and listen to each other.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting in that way, isn't it? Because it's like at the beginning of the relationship between the two main characters, Theda and Hai, there is this sort of first part where they're kind of figuring out who each other is in a way
Yeah.
and trying to sort of understand what they can tell each other. And Theda particularly, who's the guardian spirit of the cinema, and we'll come to that in a second, she's kind of reticent to, she doesn't want to sort of discuss her memories, and it's only after a little bit of time where she actually sort of opens up in that sense. Was that part of your thinking in terms of, relating it to what you've just said there about, the difficulty of talking about past memories, especially those that involve, like war and violence and this kind of thing?
Yes, it was my like intentions of building this kind of what to say, the step up trust from Tida toward Hai, the journalist, because at the beginning some people they told me also that it quite slow, but for me I treated the cinema space almost like a safe zone, and for me I always see it as a room of therapy. Like it takes
Right.
time for a
Yeah, yeah,
person
yeah.
to open up. Like a flower, it takes time to open up the emotions to the person that you never know, and that person come into your comfort space for like out of blue, and then it always take time. That's why Tida, she always uses kind of a little bit of humor, a little bit of show, to try to get in, or to try to build the trust to the person, to Hai also. The same as Hai, he also is not somebody who like, like try to dig the past of somebody. He just like offer his time of listening. He offers his time to discover something. Yeah. So for me, the first like around 45 minutes or something of the film, it was almost like um ice breaking game between two of them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, no, absolutely. And it's lovely to see their relationship kind of build. And you've mentioned there the setting, which is obviously very important. In terms of the cinema, but not just the cinema, it's a kind of an old cinema that's being torn down and they're waiting for it, to be torn down. And theaters deciding, or trying to figure out whether she can stay or, you know, go somewhere else or be reborn in that sense. And that obviously these are parts of the sort of grander philosophical themes which I want to get into. But here on this show, I'm really fascinated by people who how cinema has influenced them when they're growing up. And obviously you've set this film in the cinema, and there's also the link to the film that they talk about and you use in kind of like diegetic sound, you know, the soundtrack from the film that they're talking about. So it seemed to me that, you know, the cinema, and now you're a filmmaker, the cinema is kind of an important space for you in that sense. And you know, obviously growing up in Cambodia, you know, is very different to the Western world. I've no knowledge of that at all. But so maybe you could sort of talk about, you know, what's your formative experiences of you know, the cinematic experience and watching films growing up. What does that look like for you?
Mm. You know, let's say my experience with the cinema, it was quite like hectic, like a roller coaster, because I was born with the era of black and white TV, and in my childhood, to have a black and white TV, it was already a privilege in a village, you know, a rural village. And I remember we only used the battery, a battery to have electricity. We had no other thing. And sometimes, you know, we could watch the TV for maybe 1 hour and a half or 2 hours, and then the battery would like run off, and everybody was
Right.
screaming like, "No!" But but when you know, when I grew up, also it was just 10 years after the war ended in Cambodia, so I was still in this time that the country lack of a lot of technologies or the culture of cinema going and so on. And because I was in rural area, I couldn't have access to anything. I remember I had only this black and white TV and radio. That's it, you know. And what I saw is mostly like soap opera, you know. But when I
Yeah.
graduated from my hometown, I went to Phnom Penh City. I was already like 18 years old, and I got a privilege to study French in a French institute. And that French institute, they had this
Okay.
kind of library where you can watch a lot of film, and also they had a small like theater. So yeah, it was really like another world for me. I feel like I was not in Cambodia anymore, because all of a sudden I was put in this kind of cultural space, and I started to watch like different kind of film. It's not only French film, but there were a lot of European films, documentaries at that time. And then that from that moment on, I started to see the cinema, or I start to see this kind of cinematic language different from what I have seen since I was a kid, you know, because since I was a kid, I always watch like horror film or drama film about love story, family affair. But when I start to discover independent film, they talk a lot about different kind of life from around the world. But I remember the film that made me what to say, that kind of touched my heart the most. That film that touched on the human story, from the philosophical angle, you know. Like you
Sure.
said about a simple
Yeah,
film,
yeah.
but it can touch deep about the philosophy of life and nature. And I
Yeah.
remember that, this is something, you know, that I never watched, and I want to do something like that.
Right, right. And was there a kind of Cambodian film industry in the sense of homegrown films being made for homegrown audiences that were, you know, that essentially, you know, were not made for, say, international distribution, but kind of were part of the sort of cultural identity of the country in that sense? I mean,
Mm.
you mentioned obviously every country has their version of soap operas, but you know, I was wondering, like, if you go and you see all of these new waves, if you talk about, say, Taiwan or anywhere in the world, they've got a kind of new wave version of cinema. But then there's also the interior cinema, which is kind of like for mass audiences. What does the Cambodian version of that look like?
Mm. So for Cambodian like film industry, most of the film that were made, mostly it's about thrillers, horror, like ghost
Okay.
story, ghost film. And I think most of our audience, both old and young, they love going to see ghost film because ghost film is something exciting and mysterious, you know. And a part of that, mostly like a drama, like family drama, or the film that talk about morality in society, you know, about teacher, um, what to say, good parents or good kids, you know. And in a way,
Give you
it
the
gave,
good lesson.
yeah, like let's say the film that has a purpose to educate people to become a good human being in the society, you know. And I think it had a good thing, but at the same time, it had some kind of not so good thing also when what to say. Wow, I don't want to say this.
Yeah. No,
I
don't worry,
mean,
don't worry.
I understand because for local audience, yeah, they want also to watch something that resonate with them, you know. And I feel like
Sure.
most of people wanted to see ghost film. For me, it also a form of escapism, like, you know,
Sure.
something to make you feel like to drive your adrenaline, something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
That's why
yeah.
in my field becoming human, I mentioned also one time when Hai, the journalist, said that, oh, these days people only watch ghost film. They don't want to watch about a film about reality anymore. But Tida, the guardian of cinema, she kind of protested back. She said, yeah, because um, it's not complicated to watch like a ghost film, you know. And I don't want to say, oh, it's the audience fault to watch something like easy or something. But yeah, so this is kind of
No, no, that's
film that most
yeah.
of filmmaker made. But there was also this kind of new era of filmmaking in Cambodia also that a few filmmakers started to make independent film. Let's call it a kind of new waves, you know. It's not yet a new wave like Taiwan or like France, like we mentioned. But there were a few people who made independent film, the film that focus on the human lives without manipulating too much the emotion of our audience, you know. And this is the film that I admire and appreciate. Like the editor of my film, he also made a film called White Bearding, which was also in the same category in London Film Festival 3 years ago.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
All right. I'll definitely have to. I'll check that out and look that up for sure.
it's great film.
Um.
Also with the same actor in my film.
Wow. Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, there's the connections going on there for sure.
yeah.
Um. So when you were when you went to the French school, then you're seeing these films that kind of have that international language of filmmaking that we see in film festivals. And was there a film or a moment where you kind of decided that this is what you wanted to do? Because I read that you actually were in medical school. Is that
Yeah.
that's where you were going first of all, and then it was a filmmaker after that?
Yeah, I took the bus to the school and then no, turn left to go to the film. No, I just a metaphor. Like, yeah, I was in medical school. That was the reason that I had to study French because in the medical school we
Right.
had a lot of French lessons, of course. But I had to say that it's not only French Institute that allowed me to discover cinema. It was the first place that I discovered a new language of cinema. But being at the city, you know, I explore around the city also, and then I found out this kind of store where they sold pirate DVDs.
Right. Right. Right.
And I at that time, you know, 2010, 2011, honestly, like the internet in our country, we had limited access to internet. You know, you need to pay let's say per hours to go to an internet cafe.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so for me it was a crazy experience to discover this kind of store that sold pirate DVD, but at the same time it felt like a place for me to discover a lot of like crazy film. And I remember the film that resonated with me the most, it was The New World from Terrence Malick. And at that
Wow.
time,
Okay.
yeah,
Fantastic.
and yeah, and the time I saw the poster of a girl and boy like looking at each other, I said, "Oh, kind of romantic film," and now I want to watch something sweet, you know. And then when I watched it, I feel, oh
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
God, it's so different, and the way the film was
Sure.
composed, the shot, let's say, the this kind of connection or the poetry in nature, you know, it's something that resonate with me the most because I think I had it in me also because I was born in a countryside. I was born near the river. I was born near the forest, and I spent my childhood and youth in nature. You know, like I touched the soil from my hand. So when I saw in the new
Mhm.
world how this character goes into the wonder of nature, I feel, oh my God! If I would have the power to make a film, I would make this kind of the sensation of being touched by nature, by human, by,
Yeah.
you know, and in Terrence Malick's film, I always have this kind of sensation of, I don't know, this kind of, I can smell the forest, I can smell the skins of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
people, you know, and
They're kind of sensuous, aren't they?
yeah, like, oof. So I remember everything from the film, like, this is something that I want to make.
Great. And then did you have I mean, what got you, what allowed you the opportunity then to sort of start making, you know, your shorts? Did you start writing first, or did you get a camera? What was that sort
Mm.
of next process like? Or did you? I don't know if you went to a, you know, a film school of any kind.
We didn't have film school at that time. So for me I discovered filmmaking by shooting different things. And my dad, he gave me a kind of birthday present with, you know, at that time we had this kind of pocket camera where which you normally use for birthday party or go on a trip. And I discovered this kind of video functions and I just keep shooting different things, you know. And I just like learned to put different video together on like my software on desktop at that time. And sometimes I made something I send to my friend to watch, or I just upload something on YouTube. So slowly I start to kind of tell a story through visual image. And you know, funny enough, at that time I didn't even know that we needed script to make a film.
Right. Okay.
And
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. You're just gonna shoot stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I need to share with you this story because my first short film, accidentally, it went to a Vietnamese film festival, and
Okay.
I was asked to attend the festival to present the film, and then they announced the award that my film won best screenplay, and I didn't even know what
Wow.
was
And
screenplay.
you said there's no screenplay.
It was so funny, and I remember like, oh my God, like what is screenplay, you know? And after I got the award, I got back to my room and then I Google what is screenplay made. It was like, are you
Wow.
sure the award is from? So yeah, it was really
Yeah, but the
innocent.
screenplay was there. It was just here. You know, that's the
Yeah, I
thing.
think so. I remember to shoot that film, I always note down like, oh, today I want to shoot that action with that actress, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
it was just like a kind of very innocent journey to start from the beginning. And then I discover about script, and sometimes I attend a short course workshop about script writing or filmmaking. So slowly I kind of gain more like technical knowledge about filmmaking.
Right. It's interesting though, because it's like I've been teaching for a lot of years in film schools and universities. I mean, I'm more on the kind of critical side rather than the filmmaking side, but you know, there is a heavy burden on, there is a way of doing things. You know what I mean? We're teaching them a practice in that sense. But I think, you know, there's so many filmmakers who, I mean, most filmmakers in a sense are learning by a kind of autodidactic process. You know, they're teaching themselves little by little, bit by bit. And I think that drawing upon influences, you know, as and where you find them, and the technical side will kind of figure itself out eventually. Do you know what I mean? I think it's more
Yeah.
about the, you know, especially in your film. But but coming up to both your work, I mean, you were kind enough to send me the short film,
Yeah.
um, further and further away, and so in that, you can already really see in your work a very clear kind of visual style. You know, the way that you shoot space and the way that you shoot the countryside, and then the characters in relationship to the space, and obviously they're meditative and poetic. I don't want to say slow because that always is a negative thing, but I don't think slow cinema is a negative thing. But it's interesting that you seem to have a very a very definite kind of aesthetic eye in that sense cinematically.
Yep. I always like what to say, stick to my feeling and instinct a lot when it comes to shooting. So further away, my short film, I shot it myself. During the production, so of course I could express a lot of things from my internal feeling, and I always love the space that I'm in, and for me, the space is the most important thing to to tell the story. You know, it's not just a beautiful location, but that location has to tell us something or has to give us a certain feeling, and after that is the character, and I always focus between location and the character, like they have to be connected. So when I got the opportunity to work with a DP like Son in Becoming Human, I also brought this kind of internal feeling to talk with him. And he told me also that it was great for him to work with me also because I always like talk about emotion and feeling first. So he himself was clear also what I want, it aligns also with what he wants. But together with Son, I discover also another way of making film also because you see most of the time I made documentary and I shot things by myself. But now with Becoming Human, I kind of share my feeling with my DP. But it was really interesting for me because I always told Son that, oh, it looks like we now try to write or paint the image together. It's really interesting. But the first thing that me and Son we focus the most is the feeling of the character and the feeling of the space. And once we know what kind of feeling of the character in the space, it's easily for us to play around with the camera angle or the movement, or it can be still shot,
ខ្ញុំជាជំនាញនៅនឹងតិចការនៅរស់យាយឯងស្រឡាញ់ដើមផ្កាហ្នឹងណា
អញ្ចឹងម៉ែមិនព្រមកោះទាំងផ្ទះយកទៅបដ ாய் ទៅ
ឮថាអង្គុននឹងគេចិត្តវាយចោលយើងទៅណា
ទៅកើតបើខ្ញុំទៅចាប់ជាតិក៏ចំគ្រួសារបែបមិនញើបងសថៃដឹងក៏ជាខ្មោចអញ្ចឹងមានអីឡោម្យ៉ាងដែរតាគេធ្វើបានមិនកើត
តែធ្វើអត់កើតផងនោះ
In both the films, I noticed, that there's really a strong kind of question of the social and economic situation of the characters. And, in Becoming Human, you have this journalist who is exploring or investigating the quarry that's going on. So he turns up at the cinema and he's taking pictures of the cinema being